Oops, they did it again. Kind of, but not really, because it was an accident this time, I think. Maybe. As are most things today, the Supreme Court is political, and so this could either be a misdirection strategy, where they're doing something else terrible and taking our attention away from that, or strategic because they really want you to stop hating Republicans, or they're just inept. I'll let you decide while I explain what happened today. But first, let me take you back. I would love to say back to a simpler time, but everything since 2016 has been a dumpster fire, so here we are. Back in 2022, when the Dobbs decision was released and Roe was overturned, suddenly we had a conundrum in this country. Because, of course, immediately many states put into effect very strict abortion laws that banned the procedure at 6 weeks. That part wasn't surprising. Then the Biden administration was like, hey, wait a minute, y'all remember EMTALA, the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, which was passed to ensure that hospitals would treat patients that didn't have insurance, money to pay for their treatments, so that patients weren't dying or dumped at another hospital. EMTALA, bitches. Idaho was like, we see your EMTALA, but we feel like our definition of emergency might be a little different than yours. We don't feel like we should have to provide an abortion in every situation where there's a medical emergency. Sorry, not sorry. And the Supreme Court initially said, yeah, okay, that's cool with us. We'll hear the case later, but in the meantime, you don't have to provide abortions in emergency situations if you don't want to. Eventually, oral arguments take place. And this guy, Joshua Turner, who's like the attorney for Idaho, is like, we have our own standard of care. So when you say emergency, do you mean like the emergency for the woman, or like, are we thinking about her organs or her future fertility? It's a gray area. And the female Supreme Court justices are like, no, it's not. You want to know how wildly irresponsible this law was and his justification for it? Amy Coney Barrett changed her mind and sided with the liberals. No, that doesn't make her a good person. It's just that it was so wildly absurd that when she realized that the mother's life wasn't always going to be the number one priority, in situations where it's a non-viable fetus and there's an emergency, Amy Coney Barrett said to the dude, I thought you were going to allow for emergency abortions in situations where the mother's life was at risk, and now you're telling me that may not always be the case. And this dude's like, bet. And so it's not surprising that in this leaked decision, Amy Coney Barrett sided with the liberal justices. So did Brett Kavanaugh, and so did Chief Justice John Roberts. Idaho lost so many OBGYNs after the strict abortion ban took place, but even more when they took away the health exceptions. The residents of Idaho let their politicians know how they felt about this. There were several instances where legislators tried to have community meetings and they couldn't because of the security risks. Because when doctors are telling their patients to get transport insurance, because you live in a state where you can't get emergency medical treatments, you have to fly into Colorado, it's time to pack it in. You're on the wrong side. An emergency is so dire that you have to life flight yourself to another hospital because Idaho's like, I'm not really feeling it. We're not going to save your life today. Bye. Now, the thing is, the Supreme Court didn't actually say that Idaho has to offer emergency medical abortions. What it said was the case was improvidently granted. And that's Supreme Court lingo for, oops, our bad. We shouldn't have actually taken on this case. And the lower court had already halted Idaho's refusal to offer emergency medical abortions. And so Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is correct in saying that this isn't a victory for pregnant women in Idaho. It's just a delay.